Around 1920, American foreign policy shifted towards isolationism. This policy was a direct result of the United States' recent involvement in the First World War and lasted until America engaged in World War II in 1941. As World War I was coming to a close, President Woodrow Wilson proposed a 14-point peace plan that meant to establish a League of Nations. This league would be involved in ensuring the prevention of any future wars. However, America did not join as the Senate did not approve the treaty. This was the first political move towards isolationism of the American government. America did sign a security treaty. However, that promised American aid to the French if Germany tried to invade again. Ultimately, this treaty was unsuccessful due to isolationist ideology, and Hitler was allowed to rise to power without American interference. Other cultural factors within America also increased isolationism in the 1920s. The Ku Klux Klan was active, and the nativist movement against blacks, Jews, and foreigners was growing. The so-called new immigration of over 800,000 foreigners in 1920 furthered this dislike of foreigners. The Emergency Quota Act of 1921 was passed, establishing a yearly quota limiting immigration. This was later replaced by the Immigration Act of 1924, further restricting immigration. The government raised tariffs on exports and imports to and from Europe in an attempt to strengthen the economy and establish the United States as economically independent. The Ford-Needham-McCumber tariff was passed, raising the tariff rates to almost 40%. This strongly discouraged external trade and made it extremely difficult for the Europeans to pay back the debt owed to the United States. Under President Calvin Coolidge, the isolationism policy was continued. The U.S. remained uninvolved in the League of Nations and pulled troops out of the Dominican Republic in 1925. Coolidge's successor, President Herbert Hoover, focused on the idea that America was made great by being self-sufficient and independent, known as rugged individualism. Hoover passed the Hawley-Smoot tariff, which raised rates to almost 60%. This effectively isolated America economically from the rest of the world, who saw this tariff as an economic act of war. After the stock market crash in 1929, the U.S. and many other countries were in a state of economic depression. In turn, each nation became more isolationist. In 1931, Japan invaded China, which was in violation of the League of Nations and the Kellogg-Briand Pact. In response, the Stimson Doctrine was issued by the U.S., claiming that they would not support the Japanese invasion. However, no actions were taken to support these claims. Throughout the first years of his presidency, Franklin D. Roosevelt further encouraged isolationism. America withdrew from their colonies in the Philippines. Additionally, the U.S. endorsed non-intervention at the 7th Pan-American Conference in 1933 and established the Good Neighbor policy. In 1934, however, the government realized that the nation would need to increase international trade in order to lift America from the Great Depression and advocated for low tariff policies. The Reciprocal Trade Agreements Act in 1934 was passed, eventually paving the way for the free trade economy that took place after World War II. As tensions arose internationally, Congress passed the Neutrality Acts to keep them out of wars like World War I. This allowed for international conflicts to grow even more out of hand. It was not until after Germany began taking over European countries that America began to arm and prepare itself and 20 of its neighbors. Roosevelt established the Destroyers for Bases deal and sent American ships to Europe in order to aid Britain. The Lend-Lease Act was later passed, which allowed for the U.S. to provide Britain with weapons, effectively making an unofficial declaration of war. After the Japanese attacked on Pearl Harbor, America officially recognized the war on December 8, 1941, and the era of isolationism was over.